We don't have any audience communications. Is there anyone who wants to speak? We are going to start with committee of the whole. And we are going to first start with the Wayne Risa Board of Education election. We as a board need to assign or ask someone to go to Wayne Risa to vote for us for their Board of Education. The two people that have been longtime members are running again. So I would like to ask if Teresa could vote for us, if that is appropriate with everyone else, if everyone else agrees with that. If she's able to make it on Monday, June 6th. Second. Is that a problem?
Well, don't you mean it was so, it's, there's no actual differentiation.
Differentiation?
Thank you, in the vote, because there's, right.
Two people running and two open positions.
Yes.
Yes, but we still need to find that.
And the first item that you're discussing right now is who will be your voting designee.
Yes.
And then you'll be discussing.
We should probably have a backup.
You should have an alternate.
Okay.
I will do that if Teresa can.
Okay, perfect. Ask Teresa, do you want?
I
me to
absolutely
reach out
will.
to her?
Nope, I absolutely will on your behalf. So the designee will be Teresa Junta, and the alternate will be Mark Johnson.
That's a 6 o'clock.
Yes, I believe so.
6 p.m. and June 2nd at Wayne Risa. Okay, the item B under committee of the whole is the consideration of the candidates, and the two candidates are Linda Jackson and James Beery, and they have both been long-standing board members of Wayne Risa, and so they are the only two running for the two open positions. If anyone has any comments, we can talk about it. Otherwise, those will be our options. Unless anyone has any comments or questions.
Sounds great.
Yes.
They both served well for many, many years, some decades now. I'm thankful that they're willing to continue doing that.
And then we'll vote on that at the regular meeting next week.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Could we please add the item of the assignment of the voting designee to the regular meeting?
Yes.
To vote on May 19th?
Yes.
We'll fill this out, and then Mrs. Acosta will have to sign it, and then we will send that along so that they will know who's representing
Oh, perfect.
Livonia Public Schools.
Yes.
So we can add that to the regular agenda as well as the voting on the two candidates.
Okay, perfect. Any other comments on Wayne Risa board? No? Okay, moving right along. We are gonna talk about our quality assurance review program that we have within the district. And Mrs. O'Brien is gonna talk a little bit about it, but it's a great way to get to know how we are making sure all of our schools are moving in the right direction. It's just a lovely way your staff works at the district. So we're excited to hear from your team.
Thank you. I'm excited to kind of share with you our year 2, how we have been doing with our quality assurance review. I'm going to start with going backwards a little bit so that you remember what our process and our plan was in moving forward. So a few years back, after we had our external review from Advanced Ed, who changed into Cognia, we decided to look at our own review process and said, so how could that look for us? And we started with our mission statement, looking at what do we want to have as our vision for our children, for our teachers, for our schools. And so taking that thinking, we have had this process in place for over 15 years. So starting in 2009, we had our own internal review process. We started with a few pilot schools and then created a schedule where every school had a visit. And each time we got district accredited, we went through a process of looking at our own accreditation process and what needed to be changed or updated based on that external review. And so we've been tweaking it, making sure we're hitting the standards that an external group would bring to our district. But again, as many of you know, in 2017, our review, we didn't feel like we got a lot of good feedback from that review. Our visiting days didn't work that well. The team that came didn't focus on our classrooms like we really wanted them to, and that was something that is important to us. And in our own review process, we had spent a day, so we would do a school improvement presentation and a day in each school, and we did that. After that, we really started to think about if we really wanted to lift someone's school improvement plan and say, how is that doing? We should probably spend more than one day in their school when we did this. So we began the talks of improving our own process after we got our feedback in 2017. And then when COVID hit, we didn't go to any school visits. We met as a district team. We continued to talk about the accreditation process, balancing, would we want to have another external review, or did we think our own review process was as powerful to our schools because we know what we're working on. We know what our district focus is. So we would be able to support our schools through our own process. And so we wrote a vision in 22, just saying that we would provide a mirror to our schools. And I think that's a really important thought, is that in the past 2 years, that's been what our choir teams have done, is say, so this is what you say is in your plan. These are the things we saw in your classrooms. We're going to reflect back to you what we saw, what we didn't see in our days of visiting your school. And so we go back for 1 minute. And so really, the team chose relentlessly questioning our practices and methods in order to improve student learning. So again, really being firm on setting those goals. What do we want for our students at our high schools, our middle schools, and our elementary schools? And then holding up that mirror and say, so how are you doing on your school improvement journey? And saying that that is very, a very powerful way for us to interact with our colleagues. So last year was our first year, and I shared with you kind of some of the updates. We had the schools that were visited were principals who were on the choir team. So that first year, there were people who helped develop the process and say, so come to my schools. So we did, instead of having someone who hadn't been a part of it, people who had been having the conversation volunteer. So we went to 5 elementaries and 2 secondaries. We learned some things, we've tweaked some things. This year what we did is we have 2 positions, our innovation coordinators, we have 1 person leading our secondary visits and 1 person leading our elementary visits. That way then, each leader doesn't have their own little view. We have 1 district person who's leading those teams. And so Larry Grizek and Deanna Urso are our coordinators who have led our visits this year. And so they're going to share with you how year 2 has gone and some of the things we've learned and some of the things that we want to keep getting better at. So I'm going to ask you guys to come up here.
Okay. So there are going to be some slides that are going to show, but what I wanted to do is just kind of talk through the process a little bit that we used this year. And luckily for me, I have a little district longevity that we've been through this process with external and internal candidates. So this was pretty neat. Last year I was a lead on the Frost team, and then this year I have the 3 schools being Stevenson, Emerson, and Garfield. Each have their uniqueness to them. So one of the things that we did is when in October we have what we call our kickoff meetings. So at the kickoff meeting, we start with the whole staff meeting, and we kind of talk through what this process is. We talk about, like Tracy talked about, that this isn't new to Livonia. We've always had a review of how we're doing in the process that we follow. And then we have a staff survey that asks various questions about the school improvement, culture and climate in the school, PLT time, just a lot of different questions that were asked. At the end of that survey, we collect all the data from there, and it's pretty great from that survey. You can tell I will say, I think anybody in this room knows that a lot of our buildings have a lot of longevity in them. So it's really interesting to see that, and then really how it plays out when you start doing the visits. So after that first visit is done in October, we both pretty much accomplished all of those in October. I did on mine, and then Larry will talk about his. I took those surveys and I went back and met with the administrative teams. And I asked probably about 4 questions for them to reflect on before I came back, and what they gleaned from their survey, what were some ahas, what were some like, oh boy, and that were some of the things that they could put in their head to use as a little bit of leverage when they start their own staff meetings, and especially in terms of their PLT time and their school improvement. So after that meeting is done, we then talk about what the next visits were gonna look like from that point on. And I made a joke, I'm not gonna sing to everybody here, I only sang to Larry, that this is not a train song, but this wasn't a drive-by. This was an exorbitant amount of time, and everybody took it very serious. The biggest challenge is really coordinating our choir teams when you have so many people on so many teams trying to get them to buildings. So after that kickoff meeting and then the meeting with the principal, we start our day 1. And day 1 is a half day where the school leadership team presents to us. They talk about they showcase their school, some challenges, things that they're prideful of, some of the things that are going on within the building, some of their school improvements, some data. So there's just a variety of things that are talked about during that, probably a good hour to 2 hour presentation that they do with the choir team on asking questions as well. So after that is done in that first part, that second part of the afternoon, we start visits into the building. And I know both of us kind of scheduled our visits, so I knew who was on my teams. And I kind of looked at their areas of strength at first, if they were math, ELA, social studies, and then we assigned them to where they would start kicking off those visits. So we spend that first half day after the leadership team presents going into classrooms. Then I scheduled 2 separate full day visits where we went back. Now at Emerson I didn't need as much time, but those 2 full day visits in between there, I mean, it's pretty grueling when you're going all day long, going into classrooms. There couldn't have been, any school that we were in was very gracious about coming in the classroom, and I think that also was a benefit that we were theirs. You know, we're talking about people that have longevity in the district and invested in this district in our schools. We want everybody to succeed. So we went into the classrooms, and then I would meet with the team either at lunch or after, right after school, and we would kind of talk about, debrief, what we saw, what we didn't see, and then where we needed to get back to. The goal was to make sure that every classroom was visited. So, and Larry will share his numbers, but it's pretty impressive. Stevenson, we had over 125 classroom visits. Emerson, we had 95 classroom visits, and Garfield was the most amazing experience for me. Somebody that's been in this district and was really a center principal the majority of my career, except for my last 3 years at Holmes. So to see some of those students that I had at Garfield, what an amazing experience that was. So those classroom visits looked a little bit different because we had so many site visits. Well, heck, I never knew Livonia had an apartment that the kids learned from, so I learned a lot in there. So that was really, we had, yes, clap for sure, Megan, over 12 site visits that we went to as a team. So that was just a really remarkable experience.
And by that you mean maybe going to Ward Church?
Yes.
So does the work sites?
Mm-hmm. Where, Fresh Mart in Plymouth, to the City Hall, to Frost, to the warehouse, to, just an aviation site, I think one of our coordinators went to. So just a lot of visits to see them in there, and then obviously the classroom visits in addition to that. So we had a lot of visits that took place. I'm gonna go back to then, after, that was just a good way of kind of showcasing how much time was spent in those buildings. And then once we went through those 3 days, we made sure that we picked people, if anybody needed to go back to get to a visit. After that, I took all of that information that was collected, as did Larry, and we just kind of sifted through it. What were some ahas? What were some and we do have like a rubric that they were filling out, it's a computer, of things we were looking for based on their school improvement plan. Was it higher level thinking? Was there questioning? Just a variety of questions that we should have tied back to the school improvement plan. Now, we also know that we're in there 3.5 days, and they're with students underneath. So we share that too when we talk to, the staff at the end. So after that is done, we start to work on a report. I'd love to say that we could do it as a team, but that's challenging too. So maybe a couple of meetings virtually that we can get everybody's ideas, so it reflects everybody's findings. And then we kind of went back and forth with each other. Okay, so what are you thinking about this? And Teresa, what do you think we can do about this? So, and got those reports written. Once those reports are written, we make another meeting with the administration. And that meeting's lengthy, because in that meeting, we're going over the entire report. We're looking at data, we're looking at data trends, we're looking at bringing in my school data to kind of see where they are with schools comparable to them. So those meetings can be anywhere from 2 hours or longer, depending on what we want to address in there, and making sure that we're really giving them a thorough picture of what we saw and being reflective. And that time, we're working together in a partnership. So this is the findings. Now, what are the big rocks that you want us to really focus on when we come back to meet with your staff? And those are the things that we lift from that report. So we leave the principals with the full report, and then for myself, I kind of put it into a little bit of a slideshow at the end, just because the staff at the high school is much bigger, and I wanted to make sure I stayed. And we looked at the big rocks, and I shared with the staff when I went. I have one more left to do at Emerson. We just shared that you're with these students 180 days, but this is a snapshot of what we saw when we were here, and then in conjunction with your administration, these are some things that we want to lift and be a support to you moving forward. This isn't a one and done. We're going to be back next year, members of the PAR team, to start off the year, so that we can say, meet with your department chairs and say, okay, here's your school improvement plan. How can we help with this? How can we assist with this? Not that we're going to be in everybody's business, but at least a few times a year checking in with them to making sure we're on track. So after that final meeting, then obviously we just will say we'll be back in the fall, but it's probably a good. For the middle schools and the high schools, it was probably about a good 7 visits spent going in there and having some real conversation with the administration, and then the staff. And the staff have been really really receptive and really inquisitive. Like at the end of it, I'll just for instance talk about Stevenson last week. We finished it, and it was like pockets went to people on the team. Somebody wanted to talk about something with math that they could do something. Somebody wanted to talk about something with SAT writing. So that's what we want to see. That it should just be an interaction. It's not a hi, got you. It's like these are our schools. When our schools succeed, we succeed. That's what's the representation for us. So that's just kind of the process that we're using going through this, and in going through that process, each time you learn a little bit more. Last year when I did Frost, I thought, okay, I know what I'm doing. This year was just a whole new ballgame for me too, and being that person doing it. But I just feel like it's very rewarding for us to be in this position to do it for our own district, because who's better invested in our district than your employees, and wanting to share that and make sure that we're all growing together. And we can definitely, glean some things from every visit to kind of say where we need to focus a little bit more as a district, and then in particular schools, maybe with some of their data, and those are things that have to be worked on through their PLTs, through their department meetings, and through their regular staff meetings. So that kind of took us through just kind of the process that we are using, and I just wanted to showcase that it's extensive, as it should be, and it's, my joke is it's not a drive-by, we're here, and we're gonna be here, but again, every school was just so gracious as to, come on in, or can you come back in a minute, I'm giving a quiz right now. No, I wanna see the quiz, or you know what I mean, just let's see what's happening, in here. So it was just very, very, very positive. I'll finish this week, Wednesday, with Emerson staff report, and then gear up for next year's schools. Yeah.
Could you give the board an idea of how many people served on the team with
Sure.
you? So to get through,
Sure.
that's a lot of classroom observations.
Yes.
To me, that's one of the most impressive
So-
pieces, especially compared to what we used to get, which might have been 5 or 6 classrooms visited in a half day. Remember, they'd send 2 people from advanced side or Cagayan to a school for a half day, and then they'd get into a handful of classes, and that was it.
Yeah.
So when Dan's talking about 7 visits and then 3 days of classroom observations, it's night and day, but.
Yeah, so on the days that I go and just talk with administration, I usually just bring 1 or 2 people with me. But on the days we're actually visiting classrooms, our team, like our Stevenson team was made up of 8 administrators and coordinators. So there was 8 of us, and actually 9 when Kevin was able to join us as well. So that was a big team to bring in there. Garfield team was a little bit smaller just because of the uniqueness of it. So there was 4 of us on that team, and Emerson has 8 people as well. As far as, you know, we have the school that'll be visited next year, which will be Holmes. So Kristen Kuzno is on that team, and then the administration from Churchill, and Churchill will be visited next year. So there's 8 people on that team as well. So there's 3 distinct teams that we work on, and there's a method to the madness because, as Teresa said, the first round were administrators that were already on the QUAR team, and then as we're going through the process in that 3-year cycle, either the visiting principal was on it, or the principal going to be visited is on there. So there's just a cycle of how that will work. So, you know, that's a good point, Andre, that there's a team of us, and we go in and everybody has their place they need to be and what's going on. And at Stevenson, Pete said, I'll line up all of the cards for you guys if you want them. So we walked into the principal's conference room, and he had all the cards like we were gonna go down the hall. It was fun. I said, oh no, I think I'll just go find a seat in the class, but that's not easy either, because some classes are pretty full. So, but it was just a really neat experience. At Stevenson was really heartwarming for me, because those are some of the students that I had known to see again, but just a really good experience. And I think Larry could probably share the same.
Yeah, so elementary, the schools got visited this year were Buchanan, Cleveland, Hoover, Johnson, Randolph. So I did the math with hers. We visited about 900 visits between both schools. That's PLTs and classrooms. We do 2 days at elementary just because we're a little smaller and we can knock it out in 2 days with our team. One of the things, it's kind of funny, elementary group is pretty tight, so we don't mind having a healthy competition with each other. So out of the 5 schools, 2 said we want to win QUAR. So we told them, actually, you were at that one, and I said, well, you don't win QUAR. You win QUAR with what you do after. Like, it's not what you do before, it's how do you take it, and how do you grow with it. Like, if you're gonna grow the most, you won, and we'll know in 2 years. So, but I kind of like the competition part. I think it helps people improve a little faster. But one of the things that, you know, that kind of brought me to this job in general is school improvement. And, you know, school improvement used to be something on a piece of paper. A lot of times teachers didn't really know what it was. It was oftentimes dealing with something like really small, like a subgroup or like one math concept that kids didn't get right in on M-STEP or did poorly. So it was really easy to say, oh, I did my school improvement and I don't really change anything I do to it. But we're really trying to move into another direction with school improvement, not just have it on a piece of paper. We want to build a school improvement, a culture of school improvement in your school. So, you know, instead of shifting from one subgroup or one little math skill, we're trying to make school improvement plans that are tier 1. Like, your culture affects every single person in your building, every student, every teacher, every parent, every staff member. And that's really what we want people to think school improvement is. It's not just your plan on the paper that gets submitted to Teresa at the end of the year. We kind of talk about it during the rest of the year. So we're really trying to use QUAR to develop a culture of school improvement in all of our schools. And we're bringing that up whenever we can. One of the biggest things, and it seems so silly, and everyone knows it, but they don't know it, school improvement is adult-driven. This is about the adults. So we talk to schools about, you guys choose to have high expectations. You guys choose to give a child 180 days at their grade level. Like, we don't warm up to be a 3rd grader. You're a 3rd grader on day 1, we're gonna treat you like a 3rd grader all 180 days. You guys choose to take PLC seriously, come prepared, bring student work, find patterns of strengths and weaknesses, change the way you teach based on that information. You guys choose to come to school in a good mood. The secretary chooses to be the face and voice of the school. Like, this is all us. We choose to be this way, And when you do all of these things, you choose to have a clear vision, a clear mission, clear goals. You choose to stay on track and be positive. So like, that is up to you. And none of that has anything to do with the kids that come to your building, whether you're Cleveland or Coolidge or Buchanan. Every child in our district needs you to be this way, you to care about this. And that's how you improve the school. Once you do those things, you focus on your school improvement. That's how you change how you teach, is you know your school improvement plan, you know your academic goals, you know the target at the end of the year, and you know you can get kids there. And that's all on us as adults. So like, that's the culture. One thing that really came up last year when I got visited at Hayes, and I'm trying to help schools think about this, is just as a parent of my kids, it always bothered me that both my boys have 6 teachers, and they all choose to deliver information in their own way. Some use the Schoology calendar religiously, some kind of use it, some never use it, some have a good syllabus, some don't. And it's really hard when your child needs help to like, oh, I have to learn 14 of you guys at Northville High School, and I gotta figure out how you all work. And a parent said that on the Hayes survey, when we went during our choir survey, and multiple parents said, I have 2 kids at Hayes, one teacher communicates this way, one teacher communicates that way, one teacher expects this for homework, one doesn't. I was like, wow, I don't like that. That's how I feel at my kids' school. So we started talking about, and Choir started this at Hayes, is we want to provide Hayes families with a 5-year experience. We don't want a family to learn how you operate. We want a family to come in, this is how Hayes operates, this is how Hayes communicates, this is how Hayes works. And yeah, you have a different teacher with a different personality, works the same. You're gonna hear from us the same time of the week, you're gonna hear the same kind of things, we're gonna communicate about academics in the same way. So one of the things that I talk about in schools, because our schools are mostly 5-year schools with 3, 5, 6 is a student school, like, are you giving your parents and your families and your students the Buchanan experience? Or is it one big experience or 5 little ones? Like every year it's a different kind of Buchanan experience. So that has come up a little bit, and trying to like, that's a culture of school improvement. When you're asking kids to do these hard things, which we are, we're really challenging our elementary school kids. You need all 5 years to be on track. You need all 7 years of elementary to be on track, where everyone's on the same page. We all have the same expectations, and we all have the same idea of how I gradually release, or how do I provide productive struggle every day, or how do I communicate with parents, what do I want them to do at home. So a total school experience is part of culture of school improvement. And we're really just trying to get feedback to help with all of these things. So we do sit down with the principal. The principals have been great. We bring the report to them and go through everything. And we're ready to say, this is your report, it's staying, this is gonna be your report, it's not changing. But when we speak to your staff, is there anything you want us to focus on? Is there anything that you want us to help you launch, something that's been on your mind? You're like, oh, I just can't get it going here. Maybe Choir can help. So we're ready to do it that way. I've had every principal say, I want you to say everything on here. They all say, I want you to talk about everything, even the tough things. So that's been kind of cool, and it does help. I think it does help a school knowing that her and I are both, we're experienced principals with a lot of years, so I think it's a good way to get the feedback, and they all get an honest report. And I think every principal except Hoover has had their meeting so far, so they're the last one. It's gone great so far. In elementary, I think a cabinet member's been on every visit. We always have next year's principal, we always have academic services and student services.
Did you know what paper?
I did.
Mine,
Where did you go? Where did you go?
Can I
We
just
were
add
typically
one
like-
thing about the school improvement process? I think what Larry's saying is just remarkable, because for years, we've written school improvement plans forever, right? That was part of it. But they were kind of done in silos, and I'm speaking as a building principal. I might have had a few people on my leadership team, and we would kind of hammer it out. Later on in my career as a principal, then I would start bringing the school improvement plan to the opening staff meeting, so that I knew But early on, we didn't, we kind of hammered it out, we handed it in, and you went about life. But actually bringing it to life is bringing it to your whole staff, so that's that's one of the things that I've been talking to the secondary principals about is, have you ever shared your school improvement plan? And how would that look, with outside of just your leadership team, you have a whole meeting. If you're not sharing the whole plan, you should definitely have all your goals and some of the strategies you're working on to get there. This isn't a silo, this isn't a secret, this is what we do. So those conversations have really, been really rich to have with them, because we didn't do that for a long time. You know, we kind of did the school improvement plan because we needed to do it. And now I think bringing it to life and really tying it in, and when you talk about an experience, I absolutely agree with that. And I think we're having that same experience we're working on in secondary with lining up the assessment committee and grade books. So it's not one teacher's doing one thing, one teacher's grading a different way, to try to get that consistency so it's equitable for all of our schools. And you should get that experience whether you're in my math class or his math class. You know, how we teach it is the autonomy of teaching, but how we're assessing and grading and putting in grade book, that has to be equitable for all of our students. So I think this is really coming to life through the discussions. You know, the leverage of using the FAR process to have more of those discussions is kind of a great tool.
Before we open it up to questions, I know when we talked about moving away from an external process, one of our questions was, do we think we could give strong feedback to our colleagues? And I think they both shared with you exactly how that's going. So not all of their feedback is sunshine and roses. What are you going to work on? And when Larry says, I want you to share everything that you put in the report, not just the one thing, but these are the areas we need to work on. We're beginning to really develop a way of, and I like the idea of holding up a mirror. What do we see when we come to visit compared to what you say you're working on? So that then we can have rich dialogue about what you're working on. What does your data say? What's your parents' survey saying? What's your student survey saying? And then we can wrap that all together. So I feel like we really are on the right track in providing our schools with a nice lens from, strong, experienced administrators who aren't afraid to help support a first year, a third year, a 10-year, principal with continuing to grow and improve. So.
Teresa, or Larry, or Jan, any of you, I think it would help the board, because I think one of the most powerful things is that every observation, the observer fills out a complete form. And it reflects the strategies that are either strategies that they have been asked to utilize from a district perspective and we should be seeing in the classroom, or it reflects what is in their school improvement plan and the strategies they've told us in their presentation that they're working on. And so when the report comes out, it really is a compilation of everything that has come through those observations. And let's say we go in 100 classrooms, can you give an example of if we saw something and we didn't see something, how we might deliver that back out? Like something we'd be looking for. And if we
the biggest thing is everyone, number talks and math that become a bigger deal lately, the last few years. They're super powerful, amazing, 15-minute things. But everyone has them in their school improvement plan now. So almost every school, I'm like, you guys are in 120 rooms, we saw 120. So like that's how we start. We start that. I'm like, hey, you're here for 2 days out of 180. Maybe you did it when we left. Maybe you. The other thing that comes up a lot
You're okay.
is this is something that we talk about too, and we all three of us talk about. Like I on my visits, I try to after the presentation, I try to be the one that goes to the PLTs, and I want to hear what they say in PLTs, and I can't be there the whole hour, so I usually 30 minutes I leave. So then I see like we really want them to bring student work, and they're bringing it. We really want them to sort it and find strengths and weaknesses, and they're starting to do that, and then I leave. So like every meeting I say like, hey guys, I know I left, but just think about it. Did you change your teaching practices based on the weaknesses you talked about that day? I don't think they are yet. I don't think they're getting there because I have stayed a little bit longer on some. I said, I didn't see it, maybe you did when I left, but I think this is something the whole district is working on, everyone's getting better at bringing student work, talking about it in a great way. How do you teach different the next day? Are you getting there yet? So that comes up in every school too.
And at the secondary, our PLT days, I'll be honest, were challenging. So that was reflected in the report, not in a negative way, but we have teachers that are shared teachers, and then we have teachers that maybe had to leave because of appointments, so sometimes I walked into a room and there's just one person in that room, so I sat down and said, so let's talk about what does happen with the world history department. Kind of go back to those 4 questions. How do you know students are doing it? So we talked a lot about that. Another thing that was very glaring, and from the secondary lens, is we really focused on what was going on in the classroom and looking at, was it teacher directed and what were the students doing? And that was a big aha. I will say this, doing these visits, those are long school days for kids. So that's why that engagement piece is so necessary. They're long days, going from class to class. And so we really kind of hit on that a lot in our presentation. I didn't put all the data up, but I put 2 charts up. What are our students doing? What are the teachers doing? And like one of my reports, it was 71.4% was teacher directed. I said, and that has to happen sometimes. We absolutely know that. And again, we're here 3 days. But everybody kind of think about it on your own. Is there anything in your practice that you can change? Those kids are in there a long time, those students. It's a long day. Getting them involved. What does being an active participant look like? Not just raising your hand and asking questions, really asking those higher level questions. So that's how those conversations flow, and hopefully that they start, it resonates with them like, oh gosh, I do a lot more talking, and we always talk about the person that's doing the most talking is doing the most learning. So those are some of the bigger differences when you're going to those 6
And I bring that up, the same thing,
Yeah.
like what week we were there. So there's 38 weeks in the school year. I was there week 26 and 27, and it was teacher-led instruction this many times. Like that should be the first 12 weeks. Now it should be a lot of group work. You should be talking less. They should be working more. If I was here in week 8, this would have been great. But in week 25, 26, 31, the kids should be working. And you should be referring, working the room, taking next to kids.
So when Larry's explaining that, our gradual release throughout a year, teachers doing more direct instruction at the beginning of the year, and then it's shared, and then more independent at this time of the year. That's one of our district focuses. So that's an example of something that might not be in somebody's school improvement plan, but it is a district focus. So for a school to notice that in that week, most teachers were still doing direct instruction, it's a great reminder to start letting kids work on their own. More part of their ELA block should be independently reading and writing. And so it again provides that reflection back to them. And the other piece was we really added PLTs this year. We didn't do PLTs the first year, last year. This is our 3rd year since we added it into the contract. Elementary has a really nice day where teachers meet within their day, and secondary teachers meet at the end of their day 3 times a month. And so, again, coming into their PLTs and having people come in and listen in and observe, and the first couple, I'll be honest, I sat in the back more just to hear how they were working. You're just trying to find that way to not observe what they're working on without changing it, but then starting to ask questions. And one of my examples was I was in a 1st grade PLT team on day 1, and they were talking about the data and this one student who needed to change intervention groups, but we don't change them in the middle of a cycle. And they're like, we really think this is the right thing. So when I actually came back the next time was his first day, switching into a different room, and he walked right into the classroom. I happened to be there. He was like, it was just as natural as could be, and both teachers were like, that was perfect. He is right there. So they did make a data-driven decision in the middle of a cycle and just said, we just think this would be better. And that felt so great to have heard the conversation and seen the change the next week.
You're on a visit where a holding place happened over there, and there was a medical emergency, and I think you helped kids get in the hallway, Christine Broom and I tried to go towards whatever was happening, and they had everything under control. Within, I don't know, 4 minutes, the mom is sprinting down the hallway. 2 minutes later, EMS is there. It was so clean. It was Jen Wilson. She actually, at lunchtime, she's like, guys, I need one of you to cover her class. I need my post-crisis debrief meeting, which is by the book, perfect. And we got, not that it was good that happened, but they got to, it was real. We gave them feedback on that at their staff meeting, and how clean it was, how it worked like it was supposed to work, and they all did a great job. So it's good just to see a real day happen. Give them feedback on that.
I just wanted to give feedback. I really don't have any questions. I think it's remarkable that you get to be that voice for our staff, and that, you know, as a teacher, having people come into your classroom that don't know the culture, that don't know what's happening in their district, don't know the changes that have happened, it's really difficult to accept their feedback. So I think it's really valuable, the feedback that you're giving, and that it will be received in the way that it's intended. So I think that's wonderful. I also wanted to say, as a parent, that whole culture thing is like so refreshing, because I always pride myself in being a partner to teachers, and it's really difficult when I have to question, is my kid lying to me, or is the teacher not doing what they're supposed to? So I think that will be really appreciated by our parents.
Any other questions?
Just another observation, all of this was fantastic, but the empowerment of this lady else in the room, that they have the choice of how they show up. And I don't know that people always get that at first. It takes a little bit to really feel the empowerment of that, so I think that's really drive that home. And then during my consultation, my first elective was to talk about how we were trying to get away from the sit again. And I see that on pure display here, and I just, as a student who experienced that, I was bouncing off the walls. This was a while ago, but now it's just great presentations, so many awesome things happening. Just very excited. So thank you, guys.
Just a question, Ian, when you were talking about your visits, because you did in the beginning, you had that 2-day or split day.
Yes.
Morning and afternoon, and then you have 2 visits. Are those visits consecutive days?
No, I tried to space them out, just because I'm juggling all 3 that I was visiting, so I would kind of space them out within a month of each other. So we might start, like, I think, Stevenson, my first one, that just comes to mind, January 16th was their kickoff. Then I went back like February 2nd. Then I went back, March. Now in March, we went back like 2 consecutive days, because we had to kind of wrap up. This class needs to have somebody in it, so they're not in a row. We space them out a little bit so that we're seeing different things. And that was really powerful, and that's a great question mark, because the first half day we were there was the first day of the new semester. So I was actually, because I was in a government class, and they were talking about citizenship, and there was a lot of vocabulary given, and I knew a lot of the students in that classroom there. At first they had to just kind of get, why is she in here? Isn't the principal here now? We were teasing, and I said, to the teacher, I said, I don't want to interrupt your class, but I just told the kids what I was doing. I said, can I ask a question? She said, yeah. I said, has anybody in here ever had somebody who had to gain citizenship? And one student was like, I said, well, my aunt. But she's not, well, yeah, I guess she is my aunt because she married my uncle, but she got citizenship because she married my uncle. So just making it real for them that this happened. And I was one of the partners that it was in there, so it was 2 of us. And I was like, you're not supposed to do that.
It wasn't.
It wasn't, I said, but then you don't know me very well, because that's what I do. But, so yeah, so we try to space them out so we get to see different things.
That's what I was gonna say. It seems to me that having a little bit of time between
Yes.
visits gives you a better perspective as to what's going on in the class.
Right, and so that same class, I went back, I made sure I did a revisit, because that was a really hard day. It's the first day of a new semester, so, yeah, so that's why I spaced them, yeah.
Who did you go to? You said
Buchanan, Cleveland, Hoover, Randolph, Johnson.
And then the teams that do it, are they on for 2 years, or they just do it once and then they're done, or how does that look?
What do you,
Do you always have new people every year?
the academic academic services and student services people, we would like to keep on the same team. The principal who's on the team this year is getting visits next year. So they'll be visit the school.
So that group, we want to be kind of similar. 3 schools, I'm either pre-visiting, being visited, or it's my year after visit and I'm getting supported. So our goal, we've had a lot of administrators who are new and everything, but our goal would be that team. And again, having their leadership be the anchor helps that a whole lot. But if the team can mostly stay the same, that way then the people who are being visited in the fall walked alongside someone this year, and then they're like, oh, I know how that went, and when they come in your classroom, they say to their staff, this is how it felt.
But every one of those teams are different. The
Yeah,
only
yeah.
continuity is either Larry or
Yeah.
Deanna. So the Johnson team is different than the Cleveland
Yes.
team is different than the
Yes.
Randolph team, because we can't ask a cabinet member or one of us or a principal
It's
to
very-
be
it's very
out
tiny.
for
Yes.
3 days for one school, 3 days for another school, 3 days for another school. Like, this is a big portion of their job, right? This is a big bulk of their job. But for everyone else, they're fitting those days into their calendar.
And I think that was one of the questions that we had when we did this, like how do they fit this in the camp? How is that
Right.
working? Like, is that working well for them if they're just doing one school?
We're
Yeah.
trying to pre-schedule
Yeah.
as much as possible. You know, some of those, like Deanne talked about, jump on and look at the report. Those are planned after, so they're not as easily put into someone's schedule. Snow days came up and things like that make it difficult, but for the most part, we try to put all the dates out in the fall so that a principal can put them on their calendar and lock them.
I try just to use them on the visit days, so like we talk while we're there, I have all their surveys, and I try to write the report, and kind of leave them alone. And then I'll say, I'll send them a report and say, does this feel like what you felt when you were there? And then we meet and tweak it for an hour. Just because I know it's hard to get them for another day.
And I kind of did similar, but I didn't pester them. If I didn't hear back or get that feedback, I just went with that.
It's a little weird because like I feel like I'm presenting to 2 audiences. So like the choir team is there, and I want them to think, yes, that's how we felt. And the school's there, and I want them to hear what we felt. So like it's kind of weird. Yeah, it's good. I mean, it seems like we're presenting fairly, and what the team agrees they saw.
You guys are doing an outstanding job with this. I think the continuity of having, each of you leading the teams has made a significant difference. And what I think most proud of is, we've met that goal of having those difficult conversations and being able to truly reflect both really enhancing the positive things that are going on, but also saying, so while we were here, we did not see this. These were strategies that you talked about, these were not evident, so these are areas to work on, or there's an area on the staff survey, it said this, if that seems to be an area of concern, how might you dig into that? So, because remember, every school got a parent survey, so every parent in the district, whether that school is being visited or not, got a parent survey this year. All students in grades
Three
three and up got the survey, and every staff member got a survey, no matter if they were being visited or not. And then we're reviewing those at cabinet for all the schools, and then Larry and Deanne are digging in deeply on the schools that are being visited.
Yes, I'm sorry.
So, just wanna make sure I understand it correctly, so once the report is done, that goes to the administrator of the building. And then that report goes out to the staff from there, is that correct?
Mine are doing it all a little different.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, I've told them, I said, this is up to you. Like I'm presenting the report the way you asked me to. The actual paper and every single word, like you could talk to your 2 leaders, you could bring your guiding coalition in, or you could just give it to everybody. Like it's kind of up to you it's up to you to take it to the next
Okay.
step.
But the
But
entire
the
staff is
guts
there to
of-
hear the report.
Right, exactly, the meaning behind, whether it's the physical paper or digital copy, the guts of it, and the point of it, and the directions of it, that's what's presented then to the whole staff by you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes maybe a school had a couple areas So the report says there's a couple of areas. One of the things Larry or Dan might ask them is, do you want us to start with one? Is one where you want to start with? So then that would be a big rock in the presentation. So the other things are there, but you want to focus on, you know, whatever of
Yeah.
these. So that's one of the nice things about having the conversation. The report doesn't change based on the conversation with the principal, but it helps lift maybe, so in next year's school improvement plan, we're starting with this because they didn't see it at all, and we think we're doing this. So we're gonna make that from our May PD, our August PD, and each one of ours moving forward next year, we're gonna keep talking about that thoughts or whatever that might be.
And also kind of knowing in the report itself, both of us include a lot of data, like trends. And so when we meet with the administrative teams, we're showing that, you know, like, so this, you know, 3-year trend, let's say on that. So we're going through that for ELA, for math, we're looking through that. That then is up to, I left that up to the administrative team. That's, if you're gonna meet with your department chairs, you're going to share that data, that trend data, to say, okay, those are some aha questions, those are some PLT questions. But then what do you really want me to list? So then we work together and we come up with like, we come up with 3 things. What are the top 3, what are your 3 big rocks?
Right.
And then how are they reflected in here? And then how can I bring them out? So that we start that conversation.
The efforts
Yeah.
that are the highest priority.
Right.
Another thing, I am very impressed that every single classroom is visited. I think that's so important, and it's gotta make the stress of visits be a little bit less when it's not just certain people got visited. When everyone gets visited, that, it seems like there's gonna be more equity, more buy-in to the whole process, but this is an entire team event, not just a sampling of our team.
Every
I love that.
intervention went to,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and probably 95% of the ELA.
And that was a big feedback that I got from elected teachers in the high school and in middle schools. I never got this here, you know, so that was kind of eye-opening too, to see, so yeah.
Yeah.
We tried to make sure that everybody, I had to pull Mr. A2 in at the night and say, I can't get to those music teachers because they're at the Bandorama. He's like,
Yeah.
all right, I got it, I'm watching them right now.
And as always, as already mentioned, I'm really impressed that consistent communication throughout the building is gonna be an effort, that we make. Especially the more and more now that we are technology driven in terms of our communication. I think it's all the more important than it was maybe 20 years ago, when a lot of things were handwritten. So I think it's a fabulous idea. And then, were there any consistent themes that you saw? I mean, and you mentioned the communication, but are there some consistent big rocks that you're seeing, or are we really seeing lots of different big rocks that folks are wanting to address?
I saw some consistent, and I think that's more of the teacher-directed instruction at our, you know, middle schools and high schools. And we talked a lot about that, and sometimes it lends itself to, that's what needs to happen that day. But students are gonna learn when they're more engaged, they're active participants in there. So that was very glaring in my buildings that I was visiting, that there was a lot more teacher-directed instruction. And then we talked about it. Yeah, sometimes that has to happen, we know that, but consistently. And so then we're gonna need your help administrators to maybe, we had all the data on various things, so we might talk specific. So these classrooms here, I didn't see anything different in the 3 times I might have been in there. So maybe that's on your plate for next year, but maybe pop in there a little bit more often. So it has to just be all of us working together to make that change and to make sure that the students are more engaged in their learning. Otherwise, they're maybe nod off a little bit, or you know, we want to make sure that they're engaged. And there's so many times in a classroom, you know, that there were some missed opportunities that we could have engaged the students. So we just want to bring that to light a little bit, to like think about that. You know, think about how could I even shorten that lesson that day to make sure I'm having more time to have some of those discussions. So that was one of the things that was, you know, it was glaring in both the buildings. Yeah.
Well, I'm very impressed. I'm happy that we're going through this process. I agree too with Madeline and other comments that were made that it's, I think it gives credibility when it's our are helping one another learn and do better, so. I was great, thank you very much.
Great job, guys. Thanks so much for allowing us to bring this forward. I know you've been curious about it, and you were willing to allow us to move from advanced ed and Cognia. And, you know, as a reminder, we were spending $30,000 to $40,000 a year just to simply say we had that accreditation. And really, I think it wasn't made for a financial reason. I think it was made because we had passion about the impact school improvement could have. We just didn't see the bang for our buck out of that. And I think without question, this is exponentially a more impactful process.
Well, I'll say that, particularly that last review that we had, we were very disappointed, in what we got for our money.
Yes.
It wasn't only superficial, it just wasn't good. They just did not provide us with.
I thought they were happy to have a break from the real guys.
Yeah.
I did.
I'm not sure they had to.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, that wraps up committee of the whole, and now we move to building insight and, Spring.
Thank you. First item on our agenda this evening is 3A, which is the approval of the 2025-2026 basic annual care fund program.
Good evening, everybody. Excellent presentation, very nicely done, and it's really good work. With regard to our leases, I have 4 of them that were in your packet. 3 of them, excuse me, are, I've actually reached out again to those folks. They didn't have questions. Well, any questions they had, I answered, so there was no, seems like no issue, no concern, because as I mentioned briefly at the study session last week, the lease itself, the template is different. Just for some quick background, since I came into the position of handling the leases, which has now been, I think this is 9 years of them, we've been using the same template. I reached out to our attorney at Clark Hill, who deals with our different types of contracts, whether they be construction and through the bond, whether they're purchase agreements that we've done in the past. And I had presumed that the template we were using was hers. And when I sent it to her for updates, the response was, "This isn't mine. I don't know who created this." So above all other things regarding the use of it, I felt like having the person who would be defending us if something came up in it should be the person who actually wrote it. So, yeah, so what you have are the new versions. There are, I do understand that for me, above anything, the person that we trust with our contracts is the person that wrote it. But there are some a little bit tighter items in here for the district. I pulled out a couple of examples. For example, the other template was fairly old. The new one, we now have higher requirements for insurance coverages from our lessees, things that if something goes wrong, costs have skyrocketed over the years, etc. So that's one item. Another is a bit stronger indemnification of our lessees, of indemnifying the district. There's a, I think the last slide here for my notes. There's some stronger use language, meaning use of the facilities, a little bit tighter language on that for the lessees. And another thing that I pulled out, again, these were just some different examples, is that the new lease, as I said, is created by our attorney who we work with, and we know that she has that history with us, and would be the person that would be representing us if there was an issue. Again, all 4 groups, we have 3 that are a simple renewal, if you will. There was no major concerns. One was a question about the use of the playground facility. I answered that question to their satisfaction. So they all seem on board, okay, and I would like to present those 3 leases to the board to vote on at its next meeting next week. The fourth one, I gave you the draft. Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
On the additional general liability insurance, so number 13, those increased amounts, when the lease is signed, are we going to require them to provide an updated proof of insurance to show those amounts in order to have the lease be put into place?
And I was gonna ask for them, only ones that I'm checking with our insurance company right now, so I wanted to give them a little bit of time to go through that. So that was something that we would want to check on. I do feel like I need to give a little bit of a grace period because they only have had this for not very long. And if they're voted, if it is voted on next week, then I feel like we could have, and I'd like to talk through this since you brought it up as well, is there a concern by the board signing it before we have that confirmation? Because my sense is if they were working towards it, that's appropriate, and if I check in the future and they still don't have it, they are the ones that are in violation of the lease. It would be our ability to say, you're in violation of the lease, you either need to bring that up or not.
Well, the effective date is July 1st, so my suggestion would be they could sign the lease, but that we would not sign the lease until we have that in our possession, the updated amount, because otherwise we're agreeing to allow them to continue the lease as of July 1st. So my suggestion would be they can go ahead and sign it, but prior to, June, whatever the date is that we want to give them, they need to produce certification that they have that insurance before we're willing to sign off on it.
Will do.
So are we gonna put these on the?
One question, the higher insurance, amounts, are those consistent with the industry at this time?
I don't want to answer that question because it was not my number, it was our attorney's number that had put it in. So I'm somewhat trusting our legal counsel as to what the appropriate amount would be at these times.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We can certainly ask her that question and find out if that's the common practice. I'm gonna assume that it is, but we can certainly ask her that question.
Okay, Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burden. Mr. Francis, one of the things that I always ran into when I was practicing and ran into commercial leases like this, they always made the certificate an exhibit to the lease, except 99% of the times, even though it said see Exhibit A was never attached to the lease. I don't see anything in here that they've required, and I'm just looking at paragraph 13 to see if they've made that an attachment to the lease. I always recommended it just for convenience purposes, so you don't have to go, if you need that certificate, if there's, for some reason, the lease says one thing, and you find a certificate, and the certificate is different from what the lease says. Obviously, again, there could be a violation of the lease. But if that's 3 years down the road, and something happens, you never know, so.
I mean, we'll note that in,
Just ask me.
Yeah, it does say duplicate original copies shall be delivered to the landlord, and that we're endorsed as additional insurance, so you're right, perhaps adding it as an exhibit.
As an exhibit.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
with regard to the other one, we're still working through on the change one for the learning tree and the move. So I don't believe that's going to be in this week's, or this month's, for the vote of the board. So as I mentioned, the study session, we put that on at any point for the board, once we have it really hammered out. There's one current question from the learning tree about a piece of the language that we have in theirs. Theirs was different in a few spots than what the other three were.
So that one we'll likely see coming to us in June.
That would hope for, yeah.
Okay.
That would hope for.
Mrs. Frank?
So are we waiting on all of them until we get insurance?
So what Mrs. Oquist stated was, they can sign, so what we would have them sign, and then the board can hold off on signing with regard to, having that. So the way we could set it up, yeah, so if you voted on it, it would be, we wouldn't do anything with regard to those signatures until we actually have it. But if you'd like to get it out of the way, but if you'd like to vote on it in principle, what the lease actually says, it really just be more of a piece of the follow-up to make sure that we get back what we're requesting. And so we can wait until, you have that, for the signatures. They
We could
usually-
include that in the motion.
Yeah,
That's
they're the
exactly
first-
We could include it in the motion, we
They're
could
the first
simply
ones to
say
sign.
that you're approving it.
Contingent
However,
on-
you know, the secretary will not sign this
Right.
until we have possession of the general liability
Right.
insurance.
So we can vote on
with us.
contingent on the appropriate insurance.
I think that would be a great
So it's
idea.
coming through.
So let's list the motion that way, for the cap sheet.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? Alrighty, so we will have the first three leases, going through for a vote in May. And the last one is going to be holding off on until we get that nailed out in June. Is everyone all right with these three being on consent agenda? Because or should we not have them on consent because we're going to have the contingency? Actually, I don't have a problem. I'm thinking that it's fine. I'm fine with it being on, consent agenda. And the motion would still be,
Right.
But there's not a motion.
There's no motion.
It's just.
right, but it would still
we write-
refer to the, I mean, like the minutes.
We write them, we just don't read through them.
Right.
You don't toss it to me or whatever
Right.
person, but there is a caption.
The cap sheet does go through. I mean, the cap sheet is part of what we're voting on. We're just voting on several cap sheets all at once.
Okay. So there is a motion, even though we're not actually stating that there's a motion.
Is everyone all right with that, or does anyone prefer to have it? If not, we can vote on them individually.
I'm fine with consent.
I'm fine with consent because we're not looking at substantial differences in these
Right.
releases and their repeat over 10 years. Okay, so we'll have the first three on the consent agenda for next week. The last one we're gonna hold off until June, or until it's, the rest of the details will be known out. All right. The next item on building and site is item 3B, consideration of sale of property. Mr. Francis.
In your packet, you have a purchase agreement, between Infinity Homes and the board. This was created, by our attorney. We had verbal conversations with the, let me back up for a second, because we talked a little bit at the study session, so for folks who might be listening to this for the first time, let me back up a little bit. There's a piece of property on the Arbor Trail, between Farmington Road and Merriman Road. It's really just west of Merriman Road. It is on the south side, and it is across the street from those who recall where the Ford Skill Center used to be. This same construction company had purchased from us several years ago when we sold the Ford Skill. They put the new homes, and that's a new neighborhood. So this is across the street, very close to that area in the city of Westland. This is a piece of property that it has wetlands on it. The property, we found out recently has quite a bit, it used to be many years ago, had concrete and remainings from other things. This is probably back decades and decades ago, thrown into it. The soils in it were removed. There's a gas line that runs through it, a live gas line that runs through it, coming up from Ohio and running through. So all of those things come together to say that we had, at one point, we talked to the board about this, an offer on that property by a developer who, once that person did a little digging around, if you will, had a report created, forgive the pun there, and found out that and that person walked away from the offer. This Reno, this developer, what is it, construction, but this developer has stepped in and said he is willing to purchase this from the district and work with the city of Westland, has already spoken with the city of Westland about brownfield grant dollars to help clean up that area and to try to put as many homes as possible on it. I know the city of Westland, from the discussions we've had with Reno, that the city of Westland is supportive of having single-family homes and residents on that. Between the wetlands, between the cleanups, it really probably only has about 17-ish homes that can go on it, but he's willing to put in that effort, and because of the condition that is known on this property, he also has brought in a lower number than the original first offer that we had, when it was unknown, but still, after due diligence that the district has done, talking to our real estate consultant, having a conversation about how many plots would be on buildable. It is the offer of the $235,000 is a very good offer for a piece of property that would be clear for our residents, be clear for the community. It's not a piece of property that we could really build a school on or do those types of things. It is a wooded area, again, with wetlands, and it is not a piece of property that we would recommend to the board and say, if you wanted to put something on there, because it really isn't big enough to even put an elementary school on there. And elementary schools are generally our smallest acreage that we have, right? So it's not even close. It would not be, it probably wouldn't even be suitable if all the land was buildable, and we all know that all of the land is not buildable. So for a piece of property that is really not maintained by the district per se, because it is just a wooded wetland area in portion. We believe that it is a good offer, the amount that the district can gain from it. We think it is a wonderful thing for the community, knowing that the city of Westland is supportive of it, knowing that these would be new homes in Westland. And in Westland, the portion that is obviously Livonia Public Schools, so this could bring in perhaps some families into our Franklin triad. So at this point, what we have with regard to the purchase agreement, this has been written and vetted by our attorney from Clarendale. The terms are agreed upon between Infinity Homes and the terms that we, through our attorney, have agreed to, and with regard to the timelines, the dollar amounts, etc. So I would recommend, if the board is interested in moving forward, I would recommend saying this is a good offer for the Livonia Public Schools and the community.
Comments or questions on this item? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. I for one, support this. I think it's, again, the acreage that's there versus the buildable. I mean, we couldn't do anything with it if we wanted. Maybe we'd build a retirement home for superintendents. That's about all that we'd be able to do with it. So I think particularly the location, the type of property that's there, I trust Mr. Bowman. He's given us a lot of good service over the years, so if he believes that's a good price for it, we'll buy it. So.
And one caveat that was new to this, it's very similar purchase agreement that you've seen over the years. But one thing that we did get a carve out on was that knowing that it's, I mean, most of the time the properties when we have sold former school sites, we know generally speaking they're completely buildable. You have eyeballs on them. This one is a bit more of a wild card with the way that using a structure, the way the developers are structured, using the brownfield, etc. We did have a carve out in this purchase agreement to say that the district, if things don't go the way that they think, well, and he really believes he can build on it, but if he ends up finding out after all the due diligence that he can't, we will be able to get up to $10,000 of his earnest money back, because generally the developer would get all of their earnest money back. We would be able to get a carve out of up to $10,000 for our attorney fees that we're going to need to pay our attorney as we go through this process. So that was, I think, and Ms. Silvers had brought that up as an idea, and I thought that was very smart move, and he agreed to it without issue.
Mr. Francis, the offer is not contingent upon their being able to utilize the brownfield funds, right?
So if he doesn't get it, very likely he will have the ability to back out, put it that way. It wasn't necessarily a specific if then, but the due diligence periods that are written in there, as long as he works through those in good faith, and if things don't go the way he believes it will go, he would have, for that reason or others, to be able to back out and get his earnest money back. And that's generally speaking for any of the purchase agreements for property when developers come. All of the ones we've done in the past, they've always got that in there. It's just that nothing's really gotten in their way.
Oh.
And for the most part, this particular developer across the street when we were at the old Ford Skill had not as bad with regard to what was found underground, but had similar remnants and did not say, hey, I quit, we're out, worked with the district, had long conversations, and figured out a way to clean up the area, and still, there's some beautiful homes on that site right now.
We're not making any more dirt.
Seeing as, first off, seeing as it's a piece of land that we cannot utilize for any development of Livonia Public Schools. I mean, number one, the fact that it's not big enough, even if it were in pristine condition, it's not big enough. That alone is a reason that I'm interested in selling it. We aren't a real estate holding firm, we're a school district. We do have the responsibility of holding on to land that we believe either currently or in the future will have educational value, but this does not fall in that category. Therefore, if we have someone who wants to utilize that for the benefit of the community, and like we said, when you're building 17 new homes, there's a high likelihood there's going to be students in those homes, which will be more beneficial than us holding on to a small piece of woodland, which doesn't benefit anybody for anything. Therefore, I'm definitely in favor of doing this. Are there other comments or questions?
So we put this on the voting meeting for next week?
For next week, yes, on the regular agenda. And that takes care of building and site. Thank you, Mrs. Frank.
Thank you, Mrs. Burton. Moving to the Finance Committee, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Vice President Frank. We have two items tonight, and we have Mrs. Smith here to help us. Our first is the annual appointment of auditor.
Wonderful. Nothing too exciting. Still, I'm recommending that we go with Plant Moran as our annual external auditors. They've been with us for a number of years and done a wonderful job for us. One of the things that I really appreciate about them, not only are they really well organized when they come on site and are efficient with, their requests, it's the help throughout the school year. As questions come up, we want to make sure that we're reporting things appropriately. They're just a phone call away, and it's never a bother. That's not something they invoice us separately for. It's all really covered in this fee. So I think the fee they're requesting is appropriate. The fee last year was $56,000 for the ESD, and they're requesting a $2,000 increase to $58,000. They have included in their engagement letter some costs for new classes coming out. So that's come out with new requirements for us. So what would a year be without new requirements? This year there's the implementation of GASB 101, and they're assuming that the cost for that implementation will be between $46,000 for that additional work. So again, I think it's an appropriate fee they're asking for, and they've definitely been a wonderful partner to us. I also appreciate that throughout the year they are the go-to for professional development. When I attend conferences, they are always there presenting, because they've got a very deep bench of knowledgeable people that save us on big things impacting the school district. So so make this decision easy to make this recommendation to you.
so much.
Thank you. As you know, Wayne Teresa is required to present their general fund budget to the local districts for their either support or not support. So they sent that to us. Timeline wise, just want to make mention that this budget was presented to their board on April 16th. There'll be a hearing, a budget hearing on May 21st, and it'll ultimately be voted on June 11th. Law requires that we vote on the general fund, but they do include all of their funds for reference. So I've gone through and made notes of what I thought were a few of the highlights. Number one, the general fund continues to be very strong. I don't think I realized how big their fund balance was. Their fund balance is 106% this year, projected to be, and 97% for next year. And I made note that their general fund also includes a almost $8 million transfer from the general fund to their capital projects fund. So they're doing very well. So just like we have our Q fund, our capital projects fund, they also have a capital projects fund. I read in their FAQ that they use those funds to update spaces. They hold a lot of professional development for local school district employees that'll come there for PE. So they're using that to do some updates to their facilities. So that was one item of note. I also noted that the Wayne County Enhancement Village Fund, that they're projecting revenues to be up about 3%. So that's great news for us because that means additional Wayne County Enhancement Village dollars for our district. And lastly, related to Act 18, that does continue to be very healthy. As mentioned last week at the study session, they did mention it's not included in the packet, but they mentioned that they're starting to utilize some of that fund balance, and so some of the reimbursements to districts for the unreimbursed special ed transportation costs and program costs that we're getting for the last number of years, that they're looking to cut that for the following year, and they said as much as 50%. I think it's a little too early to tell, to be honest, looking at what their budget is. I think if the budget comes in where it is, maybe there's some discussion to be had. Right now, the Act 18 fund for this school year is looking to end at 108% fund balance, and next year the 81% fund balance. You know, by no means do we want them to whittle down their fund balance and put us in a not safe place where there could be chargebacks, but I think they're sitting on such a large fund balance by the end of next year, and also proposing to cut us by 50% for those other reimbursements. We probably would want to continue conversations with them. So those off-schedule payments between the transportation and program costs, that does bring in $3 million for us. So if that were to be cut the following year by 50%, that's $1.5 million out of our general fund budget. So I do appreciate that they're being very forthcoming with those, possibilities. I'd rather know about the year in advance than to find out next May. So I appreciate that, but I definitely think that's something that we'll continue to watch, how the fund balance actually comes into that activity fund. So those were some of the highlights that I made note of, and I'm of course happy to answer any of the questions you might have or ask Teresa if I'm not able to answer them, get those answers for you.
Questions, Mrs. Frank?
I just wondered, would it be helpful for us to give, when we said that feedback, just because of their healthy fund balance? I think that all of us feel probably, I don't speak for everybody, but feel very strongly that they're not cutting programs when they have such a strong fund balance. And so is it helpful for us to give that feedback? Is it?
I would say maybe at this point it feels a little premature because they haven't formally included that in the packet. That was more of a courtesy. I know they made to the business officials. So I think that's something that can continue to be on my questions for them throughout the school year. And if it looks like it's starting to head that way, I'll definitely keep you informed so that you could reach out to Teresa and share your thoughts. But of course, I support whatever you want to do. If you want to let them know now,
Well, let us know when the time is right.
yeah.
Mrs. Frank?
And following up with Mrs. Frank's comment, that was exactly my question. Can you let them know right now that already our board is, at least speaking for myself, and sounds like Mrs. Frank at least, not thrilled that they're talking about doing that. 81% fund balance is more than healthy.
Yes.
And that's a polite word that we're using for it, but that's huge. I agree that I don't want us to get in a situation where they're gonna have to give us the chargebacks, but I would be exceedingly disappointed if they decided to give us a 50% cut on that while they sit on anywhere near 80% fund balance. But if you could let them know before we get to the point of that
Yep.
proposal.
Yep,
Thank you.
Jack, I'll send that back with me, send back our resolution, so.
Any other questions? All right, so we have to fill out the resolution, right?
Yes,
So
please.
we need to put that on the regular.
Perfect, thank you.
And, Vice President Funk, that concludes finance.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And that brings us along to curriculum committee, Ms. Acosta.
Thank you, VP Fran. We have one item this evening for, everyday math journal purchases, and Mrs. O'Brien's gonna lead us in that discussion.
Thank you. I have a request to purchase everyday math journals for next school year. Typically, I bring a 3-year purchase, but as we are looking at adopting a new program for our K-4 schools, our goal was to be ready to make a recommendation for a new math program in the spring this year, but instead we're taking a little bit more time, which is a really good thing. We're gonna pilot another program next fall, so we need to purchase more journals for 1 year. The, cost of this is $126,438. They are providing the teacher licenses for first, second, third, and fourth for free. And, it would provide the 2 journals, the first half of the year, the second half of the year, to all of our students K through 4.
Any questions?
I appreciate the detail of the study session, where we really got into the details. I don't think we need to go into it here, but, thanks for the thoughtfulness and doing this.
Mr. Johnson?
Just to make sure I understand, you said 126,
438.
right, and then there's, estimated shipping and handling, that
Oh,
takes it to
Yep,
129?
yes, I was looking at the breakdown, not the total, so you are correct. So there
Okay.
is shipping and handling, so it's a total purchase of $129,245.16. Thank you. For $25,212 in free materials.
All right, thank you.
And that's how it was in the memo.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. And that, will go on for the regular meeting,
Yes, please.
and that concludes the curriculum committee report.
Thank you, Ms. Acosta. Now we will move to the policy committee, and we have,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Vice President Frank, may I go back
Yes,
to the
yes,
RISA budget just
of
for a
course,
moment?
yes, yes.
Just because you asked that question and, I appreciated Mrs. Smith bringing that forward. When I look at the FAQ under question 10, I did want to note that while they told us no decision has been made, they do say, due to the diminishing level of projected fund balance available and the increase in center program budgets, the one-time payments will be reduced in the 26-27 budget. So I am wondering if, when this does get voted on Monday evening, I think it would be appropriate for the board to share the concerns about that, in that while we understand their fund balance may be decreasing, it's still extremely healthy.
Yes.
And that in fact, is something that, although it's one time, has been included, I believe, for the past 7 years. And so, that we would want them to consider that very, very carefully, how that will impact districts, and that we would be concerned about that. And then Mrs. Smith and I, in our respective roles, can also deliver that same message. I think that's one option. I think another is to, certainly perhaps consider, as we go a little further along and begin to see this in planning for next year, to consider having the board write a communication to the board on
We
this.
did that
So,
a few years back.
yeah.
Years ago.
So, just a thought, because it feels like it's built in there to anticipate that it will be happening. Now, it may not be the 50% reduction that has been mentioned, but I do think that we need to realize that any reduction at this point, those really are dollars that we have begun to incorporate in. And while they have always used the term one time, after 7 years, it doesn't necessarily begin to feel like one time. And so we would, we were thinking that for us, 50% could be just about $1 million reduction as of next year. So that would be very impactful.
Mr. Johnson?
I don't know what committee
Um,
we just did
No,
that,
you-
so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Sorry, I had
Because
to.
that would be
I was
so many.
coughing my head off,
Oh, yeah,
excuse me,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you for,
We're talking
excuse me for a
about-
moment, I coughed it. If that does come to pass, next year, and they actually are proposing a 50% reduction, if our board votes no on support of that budget for that item, what impact would that have? I mean, would they have to have 50% of the school districts vote no in order to reject their budget?
You know what, let's find out, as I'm recalling from the law, I think it's offering an opinion on there, I don't know that it would impact the board's ability to still pass the budget. And I do know that the law specifically only speaks to the general fund being, what the board is officially voting on,
Not the
So-
Act 18 fund.
yeah.
Okay.
But it could certainly, a number of
It will.
districts giving
Mhm.
feedback may influence the board.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And, you know, we certainly want to continue to work cooperatively, we have, you know, very good working relationships, but I think we do need to be forthright in advance so that they understand that this would be very impactful.
When MSBO is setting a target of 15 to 20% for all of the districts, 81% and above 100% are exorbitant. And even if it's been a 7-year one time for 7 times, it's not just the one time that gives me pause on that, but that's an appropriate use of those dollars. When at that time that they began doing that, they were over 100% fund balance. And the purpose of those is to support those Act 18 students. So that's a very appropriate use of those dollars. So if you could let them know that we are absolutely serious about this. And I agree with Mrs. Frank and other board members, Mrs. Opus, that voicing that next Monday night and at any time going forward, to let them know that we are very serious about that.
Because these funds are supposed to be used for
Mhm.
this
For these
cohort
students.
of students,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
As opposed to saving
Right.
it for the rainy day. It's not what taxpayers are paying for, the savings, so. Yeah, I think that's the least that they could do is provide that to the schools when they're sitting on that much, that huge, the big of a fund balance. Okay. Anything else on that? Now we'll move on to policy committee, and Mrs. Smith is gonna share with us the policies that you have for us to update.
Thank you. The first board policy for tonight is DFF, post-issuance tax compliance. This might just be the most boring one in all of the policies. It's a requirement though to meet the Internal Revenue Code and its regulations. So this was something I would have to imagine was drafted by our attorneys back in 2012 when it was adopted. So what I did was shared it again with Troon. Ian Koffler is our attorney with Troon, who helps us with all our bond sales. And he and his coworker, colleague, have come up with a few minor tweaks. You know, as I read through them, I'm not really seeing any changes to the meaning, but just kind of some minor updates. We were thankfully able to get that in the packet on Friday, so I'm not sure if you have any questions or if you want me to highlight those, but they're rather straightforward and again, kind of some just minor changes.
This really does deal with a lot of tax, a lot of legal wording. It's not really for most of us in terms of accessing every day or looking at, but it does go to a lot of detail, so I don't know that we need the depth of it. Are you comfortable with moving on as it is, because our attorneys have looked at it and approved it? Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes.
And I do think that we feel that it's really reflective of current practice as well as the intent of the policy.
Yeah.
It really is cleaning up some language from Ian's perspective.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, so we'll put that on DFF for first reading.
Okay, thank you.
For the reading, you're welcome. And then policy DID.
Perfect. DID, currently called audit published statements. First change I'm proposing, as we discussed at the study session, was an update. We really don't refer to the financial statements as published statements anymore, so updating that to read audit/financial statements. And this one is a short one, so I'm happy to read it. I believe we had some discussion last week at the study session about that second paragraph, so hopefully I captured what we talked about, but happy to take some feedback if it doesn't quite ring how you're hoping it will sound. So it would read, the Board of Education shall appoint an independent auditing firm to conduct an annual audit of the district's financial records. The auditing firm shall present a comprehensive report of its findings to the board and provide additional reports as requested. The audited financial statements shall be made available to the public on the district website and at district offices following the presentation of the financial statements to the board.
Good. Any comments or questions on that? No, I think you hit what we said in the study session, I think, yeah, I think you did a great job on that. Okay, and then board policy DJB.
Perfect. This one, I don't believe has had any adjustments since we reviewed it at the study session, but because it's so short, I'll read it for us. The Board of Education authorizes reimbursement of we did add authorized to this, policy from our study session.
Yes.
So the Board of Education authorizes reimbursement of authorized, reasonable, and necessary expenses incurred by employees while performing official duties on behalf of the school district. Employees who are required by the school district to use their personal vehicles for approved work-related travel shall be reimbursed by the district for mileage in accordance with IRS guidelines.
Any questions, Mrs. Burton?
We use the word authorizes twice in the first line.
Looking up synonyms right now.
Approved, if we can change the second one to approve.
Yes, absolutely.
So the Board of Education authorizes reimbursement of approved necessary, reasonable and necessary expenses.
Anything else? Okay.
You know,
Go ahead.
if we could back up, I don't remember, when we get our financial statements, usually presented by Plant Moran, we vote to accept them as presented. So should we be saying that once they are, it's the policy says that they will be, let me see here,
Part of that.
oh, I'm sorry,
the
I'm
cap
on the
sheet
wrong one.
too.
DID.
Following the it just.
It says following the presentation to the board. Should it say the approval of the board? Or should it say the presentation to the board? Not sure which way we should go on that.
And I'm just pulling up our cap sheet from last year to read, the motion. So the cap sheet reads, move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the, in that case it was the 22-23 audit report as presented by the audit firm of Plant Moran. So we could do, after the board is accepted. Yeah.
I think accepted would be better than present,
Yeah.
than the presentation.
Yeah,
So
so following
following
the
the
acceptance of the
acceptance, right.
financial statements by the
By
Board
the
of
board,
Education.
yep.
Perfect, I'll make that change for next week.
Thank you.
Anything else under policy? Any other comments? No? And that concludes policy, and we don't have anything for legislative,
We do not.
and nothing for personnel?
We do not.
Okay. And that concludes our committee of the whole meeting for May 12th, and we will look forward to seeing everyone next Monday night for our regular board meeting.